Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's short lunchtime talk on oral history. Let's wait for a couple of moments in case anybody's just waiting to join us. As I said, welcome to this talk on oral history in projects, part of our series of short lunchtime talks that we've been doing over the past few months. Some of them have been talks, ones that we would normally be delivering if we were able to get out physically and see people. Other ones are aimed at groups or individuals who are thinking about doing projects. Perhaps now that we can get out a bit more and hopefully things will be easing a bit more to enable us to get back to the projects that we were doing 2 or 3 years ago, and providing some tips from our experience of people using us and also of our own projects as well. And today, as I said, it's about oral history, and we've got a lot of experience with that, either running our own, assisting people with theirs, or just doing small parts of help and support and advice. Maggie, one of our archivists, is one of the West Midlands regional networkers for the Oral History Society. So today it's looking at some of the key things to think about. If you're actually doing it, there is training that can be delivered to go into a lot more detail, but these are some of the things to think about if you're considering it, wanting to get started, and considering it. What do you need to know? What are the things before submitting when you're still planning to think about? So one of the things is, what is oral history? It is a term that is used quite a bit, particularly we're familiar with it because we've involved with quite a few projects. We have quite a few oral history collections. But how is it defined? Well, University of Leicester, who do a lot of work in this, it's defined as the recording, preservation and interpretation of historical information based on the personal experiences and opinions of the speaker. It may take the form of eyewitness evidence about the past, but can also include folklore, myths, songs and stories passed down over the years by word of mouth. In addition, it's usually done through recorded interviews with ordinary people. The phrase ordinary people is not derogatory, I hasten to add. Sometimes people wonder about that. It's you and me. It isn't necessarily an esteemed academic historian writing about something. It's people involved, eyewitness, people who are there, people who experience things. Often people who wouldn't necessarily expect to be telling their stories. And it's recording, getting these things down, making sure that these stories are preserved. And it is personal, and it may be opinions, so it's often sometimes getting various stories because it might not be the definitive account, but it's bringing these things together. One thing to mention is it is different to reminiscence therapy, although it can have a little bit of link and crossover. Reminiscence therapy is where sessions are run, usually with older people, to stimulate memories. So old photographs and things are used to get people talking about the past, get people thinking, using their brains, looking in their memories. And that is absolutely fantastic. And oral history can be a bit like that, in that people are sharing their memories. You might have things to help start conversations. And both of them will have stories and people sharing memories. But reminiscence therapy, unless it's explicitly said, will not normally be recording them, or at least they shouldn't be. And in some cases with that, you're not concerned about whether it's accurate or not. The main thing is that you're getting people being stimulated and talking about the past. But you just need to be clear if you have to be upfront and honest in what the purpose is and what you are doing. So mostly when we're involved, it is actually oral history that we are looking at. So why do it? Hopefully, if you're watching this, you have some idea of why. It's helpful taking a step back and thinking about it if you're doing an application, of explaining to others. Oral history is very good for getting stories that you may not get elsewhere, enhancing a local historical record. These are stories that people are probably not going to write down. Very few people write down their autobiography, write a book about their experiences. Whereas you can go and have a chat with somebody, they can share their story, share their memories, something fairly specific. It can be things that often get overlooked, It's from the main historical one. Derek's saying he's getting an echo. Is it just me? I don't know. Everything seems to be as we normally do. I can't think that there should be anything providing an echo. I hope that's just a temporary thing. But you're getting stories that you wouldn't normally get, and all sorts of information about various and specific topics you can ask people about. It's recording memories before they're lost as well. A number of times as part of projects, we mentioned about doing things that, if you'd only done it 3 or 4 years ago, old Mrs. Smith round the corner had all these stories. And it is getting them, before they are lost, before people pass on. It's all the people that we are speaking to, and it's capturing those before they're gone. It can also be great for involving the community and valuing older people. Sometimes I can think of a couple of projects that did bring a community together. It might be 3 or 4 different villages in an area who don't normally work together, but this brought them together. Older people liked telling their stories. This is another place where it gets linked to reminiscence therapy, but that is almost a byproduct of it. But that can be great as well. And intergenerational project getting children and young people interviewing, so they're learning and bringing the different generations together. And that can be a fantastic opportunity, as I said, to bring people together who wouldn't normally. And one of the other reasons is have you got a particular idea of what you want out to get at the end? So this oral history will be a resource for books, videos, exhibitions. A play might be written, an audio guide. If you go to Specialty Gardens, the audio guides there uses clips of oral history. That's one of the reasons they did those interviews with members of the family, is so that they could put that into the audio guides. So sometimes you have a particular project, you have an output, and thinking oral history is the right way for getting that information and getting those resources together. So examples of the types of projects, some of them might be based around a theme. We did about 20 years ago or so a project interviewing people about World War II, and that was the main focus, the main theme. Other people have done about the local music scene in the 60s and 70s. It might be about a particular industry, farming, market gardening, a particular factory. That might be the theme that you want, the particular thing that you're looking for, or sport. Geography is about anything within a local community, a local organisation, the history of the village. And I was thinking, is it to do with an anniversary? The 150th anniversary is something, it'd be around that length, but within living memories. Or something closing. A factory is about to close, an organisation is about to move or go, and that is an opportunity to speak to people, to do a history, to get people's memories. I thought I'd share a couple of clips from projects that we have been involved with, just to give a couple of examples of what clips we've had, and people always usually enjoy listening to these. That came from a market gardening heritage project that we've been running. That's one strand, the oral history, alongside with research and things. And so we're able to share various clips and put images and things alongside. and we share some of the VE Day memories of Iris. I think those two clips, just show you the benefits sometimes of just hearing somebody, hearing the tone of voice, hearing people talk about their stories, their memories. People who might not, have put down their stories in any other way. One of it is just audio. That we've used our website. The other one we'd be able to put images alongside. Whoops, I think. They got started again. So a few things about planning a project. This is just a few key tips. They're also in the link in the details of the YouTube on YouTube about this particular film. There is a link to our website which has got a 4-page guidance document of things to think about that goes into a bit more detail. And often, if you contact funders and things, they will provide things like this as well. But some of the things to think about if you're contemplating an oral history project is thinking, why are you doing this? Of having it clear in your mind what you're looking for, what you're doing, what you want out of it. Is it the main project? It is an oral history project, or is it just part of a whole, like the market gardening one? There's other strands as well. The oral history feeds into that. Is it the best approach? Are there better ones for your the output of what you're wanting at the end? Is it duplicating previous work if somebody has already done something very similar? As I said, what were the outcome and goals that you're wanting? What are you wanting at the end? Is it about engaging with the community, getting the memories, the output? What are you wanting out of it? Think about what is involved. Research other projects, speak to other people who have done similar things. You can speak to ourselves, the Oral History Society. Look online and find other oral history projects. What have they done? If you know people, speak to them. What was involved? Your project will be different, but what can you take from that would be applicable? Have they got any other ideas of, I hadn't thought about that, but we could add this particular bit. There's no substitute for speaking to people being involved, for knowing what is involved. With the budget and funding, think about what's involved, all the possible costs that will be involved. Will you need to apply for funding? If so, it's usually Heritage Lottery Fund is the main one, unless you know of a particular other funders. If you are going to funders, check what they're funding and their priorities, so you can write a good application based on their priorities. Make sure you're covering all the costs. Sometimes people can do things on a shoestring. Ideally, if you've got money, that it allows things to be done properly and recorded, edited, things like that. But speaking to other projects as well, making sure you've got everything all covered for what you need to include. And drawing up a project plan as you would do it with any project. As I said, speak to other people as well of what's involved. And other oral history projects of making sure you've included everything. What is the timescale? Is it realistic? What do you need? Do you need other help and support? Are you being a little bit optimistic? Check with other people whether they think that this is all doable, and how you'll monitor the progress. Who will you need in your project team? Who's going to manage it? Is it a committee? Is it one or two people? If one of the key people left, for whatever reason, or was unavailable to continue, would other people be able to help and support and step in? Will you have a project officer to help deliver, either paid or voluntary? Would you appoint somebody, or would you ask a freelance person or another organisation, whether they can help. Do you think there'd be any problem, for instance, recruiting volunteers, who are often a key part of projects like this? Would you need any help with that? So thinking of how much help and support you'd need and all the different skills that might be required in the different stages. And think about the equipment needed. It can be done on a shoestring with something like a mobile phone. There are voice recorders on things, but those are fairly basic. And if you're wanting, for instance, for you to use it in films or for people to listen to as part of the end result, that might mean that you definitely want a better quality piece of equipment, and would people would use their own or sharing or things like that. And again, getting advice from other people and people like ourselves and the Oral History Society for different options and what you can do, and building in costs for that. So some of the things involved in interviewing, I said we'll go into more detail with advice from Oral History Society ourselves and other people, and there is training out there as well to go into a lot more detail. But I thought I'd mention is just a few things to bear in mind and think about with the interviewing process. Finding interviewees and interviewers, so volunteers to carry out the interviews. Interviewees, you might have already got ideas of who you want to capture in terms of their stories. Think about how many you can cope with and how many you can do, and try not to be too ambitious. Many fall into that category. We've done that, we'll just do another one, we'll do another one. It does take time to process and go through, transcribe, etc. at the end. And it's very easy to get carried away. In the late 1980s, there was Manpower Service Commission projects, which included some oral history projects linked to museums and local studies libraries. And I know that at least 2 or 3, when they were coming to an end, they just put all their resources into just interviewing as many people as they could before they finished. The problem was they couldn't get all the paperwork done and everything like that. So you have a filing cabinet just full of tapes, but they're not quite sure what things are. And the other projects have suddenly realised, this is taking a bit longer, or we'll just do a few more, and then realise actually how much time things can take. So sometimes you have to be a bit ruthless and say we can only do so many, and plan in how many you can take. The interviewers need to be trained. There are various training things out there. So they can know how to do it, how to conduct an interview, setting it up, making sure that you don't fall into the traps like talking over somebody, leading them on, trying to make sure that you get the best possible recording, particularly if you're wanting to use that edited versions as part of an end product. The arranging and carrying out an interview, liaising with people, finding the right place, usually somebody's home, but are they comfortable with it? Is it the right conditions? Is it going to be quiet enough? And then ensuring paperwork's completed. This is very important. We have the details of the interviews and permissions, the Manpower Services Commission ones that I was mentioning, the ones where it didn't quite end as it should have done. The problem was they didn't have the paperwork. So they had a case of, we've got no idea what the permissions are. In some cases, who these people are speaking on this tape, which means that all that effort can't be used. And then the summarising and transcribing of interviews. For people to access and find out what's inside, either you listen to maybe an hour's worth of interview, or else you have people summarising, listing the different topics that they're talking about and approximately when in the interview, and in some cases transcribing them word for word. This makes it far more usable, and outside people and other people later on can come and use it, find particular stories and search through. It can take 3 to 4 hours per 1 hour interview, which is why at the start I said try not to be too ambitious. There's quite a few projects have found that they get this big backlog at the end that they keep interviewing, but it's the processing bit at the end. And in some cases, you might find people who are quite happy doing the summarising and transcribing, who don't wish to be involved in actually doing the interviews. It's finding the right skills for people. And just mentioning a few ethical considerations. Again, any training would take that into account. These are important things to bear in mind, is when you're doing oral history, always making sure that the interviewee knows what they're doing and that they're giving informed consent. They're happy to be recorded. They know why it's being done. So it's spending time beforehand explaining. As quite often you'll interview older people, sometimes it can involve speaking to relatives of the person as well, making sure they're happy, also having somebody there alongside to reassure them. As then make sure they know what's going to happen. Where is it going to go? How can it be used? Will you be putting it online? Will you be doing a film of it? That will go online or a broadcast or a public display where people can come and see. And leading on from that, have you got the signed permission? So you've got it in writing in case there's any queries about that or you're not sure. Ideally, get all this talked about at the start. Occasionally, because of a project that the project officer was saying that they realised that because they went out afterwards to get everything signed, and that there was 3 people who were a bit uncomfortable about that, which is fair enough. People have every right, but that hadn't been fully clarified at the start. They were only doing about 9 or 10 interviews. So they said, well, if we'd have known that, we might have, for instance, gone to somebody else. So it's entirely up to people whether what they want to do, and again, it's getting it signed. Is when having that conversation at the start, and I said making sure that it is all signed. So if there's any query later on, you have that all to hand, and you're not going back and checking, having to ask. And also think about sensitive subjects, because there could be some that they could bring up particular memories, or there could be things that people are talking about that maybe using terminology that we might not use nowadays, or talk about various subjects that you think, if we're going to be using it, I'm not quite sure. I have to think about how that's portrayed. When we did the World War II project, we had a number of people who'd been prisoners in the Far Eastern camps. Understandably, that was quite a sensitive thing, and those who were involved said that there were occasions where you just had to pause the interview and let somebody just get themselves together and before carrying on. I mean, some of that they were a little bit aware that was that might come up, but there could be other things as well. Could there be other things that might upset people elsewhere? If it's talk about in a village and somebody's saying, "Oh yes, Mr. Such and Such, yes, his shop. Oh yes, he sold knocked off goods." If that person's family is still alive, they might not be very happy. It's things like that of being aware of what could come up that might be a little bit sensitive. Might have to think about how it's handled. Sometimes, what happens if somebody gives incorrect information? Because often this is just they're not researching it, this is what they remember, and sometimes it's genuinely they think something happened the way it was or a particular year, which is sometimes why it's good having a few different interviews. But yeah, that can be a challenge. I know there's different ways of tackling that, but that can be something that does crop up now and again, and having to think about how you would handle that. And then the output, what do you want at the end, which may affect what you're wanting with how you handle the project. What are you going to do with it? Is it you're going to do a book? Is it a website with clips and things on, a film that will be broadcast maybe at a particular event, a podcast, an audio guide like I mentioned with Spetchley Park Gardens. So you're wanting particular stories which may affect who you're going to interview, how you interview them, whether it's important you get really good quality interviews and definitions of there, or if it's just the information, or it's just typed extracts in a book, for instance, that's not as important as getting the information. So that would have a good think about how, and thinking other people, there might be other ideas of how this can be used and how it can be shared. For the editing, you may want to get a professional editor. There are various people who can do that, who have the ear for picking out good stories and also the technical expertise to be able to to splice these together and to take those out. And so it's building that into the costs of the project. And thinking about also, where will it be archived? Where will it end up? Ensuring it can be accessed and stored afterwards, both next year, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. It's quite sad when you hear about people mention about, oh yes, years ago, such and such did a load of interviews, and then nobody knows what's happened to it. They're not quite sure where it's happened, and you think, oh, I hope it has gone somewhere where people can find it. You don't want it just do this and then it disappears. You want it to be available in the future, because often otherwise the people may not be around to tell these stories again. One such place, if you're in Worcestershire, is Worcestershire Archive and Archaeology Service. We store many oral history projects. The costs for this can be built into a project. People at HLF are quite happy to have the archiving costs included. It can also include, as part of this, making sure everything's backed up so that nobody accidentally loses a file, and also thinking about things like CDs and tapes that will become obsolete. There is a big project with the British Library trying to make sure that oral history, which is on these formats, are being digitised and copied so they are available for the future. And as I say, ensure all paperwork is complete so it can be sent in with it. So if somebody comes to it in a year's time, they know, they said, oh, can I use this clip for such and such? You can look at it, yep, you've got the permission, or sorry, no, you've got to ask them again, or you can't do that. And you know exactly who's who, what it is. If you've got the transcripts or the summaries that are there as well, so that everything's together so people can go through and use it. So it is the most usable format that is available, and people can therefore sort of take advantage. It can be used in the future as well as for the project that you're wanting to do. There is help and guidance out there. We can give tips and guidance. On our website, there's a guidance sheet for if you think you're doing a project, and on YouTube, in the notes about this particular clip, there's a link to that page. The Oral History Society can provide advice. There are 3 West Midlands networkers. Maggie, one of our archivists, is one of those. And there's also Juliet and Siobhan as well, who are freelancers who can provide help and advice if you're thinking about it. And the East Midlands Oral History website is good website, guidance sheets on there as well. And the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which if you're applying for funding, that often is where people would go to. If anybody mentions oral history, they will normally pass on guidance leaflets and things and suggest that you get help, and can usually suggest somebody that you can speak to. So I hope that has been useful. Oral history is a fantastic resource, and we've been involved with several really good projects and other ones that we're aware of that have been passed to us. It's just worth thinking about it if you're starting at it, thinking all the different aspects, what is involved, all the different processes, what's in terms of time and money, what's involved, so that you can go into it with your eyes open. So there is plenty of advice out there. Have a look at what other people are doing as well for suggestions and ideas. As things are opening up, it's a little bit easier. A lot of oral history has been on hold for the past year, 18 months, because we can't very easily sit down with somebody and interview them. But as things are opening up, if you are thinking about a project and thinking possibly about doing oral history, get in touch, let us know. I would love to talk to you, or contact the Oral History Society to have a chat and provide any advice that you need. Thank you very much for listening. I said this is the last in this series, but hopefully we'll be doing some more in a little while of our short lunchtime talks. Thanks very much, and I hope to either speak to you or see you soon, or maybe at some of our workshops or in the Hive. Thanks very much. Bye.